Tyler Jackson, Play Sheet Sports. I am in beautiful Coal City. A lot of people might not say it's beautiful, but if you sit here, you look around the scenery, the turf that you guys had redone recently. That's what I would say is beautiful. But I'm joined by John H. Lilly, head coach of the Independence Patriots. John, how are you doing this
I'm
morning?
doing great, doing great.
Terrific. Thanks for having me down here today, Media Day. I know every coach I've talked to so far, like, I don't Media Day, I hate it because the pictures, the organization of it, but it's always fun for us. Just kind of recapping last year, you know, it's a success. It's a success. It's a success because you make the playoffs. I mean, if you go back 6 years from now, and you told this community they're going to win a playoff game, they'd probably be over the moon because before the standard was essentially 6-4. So sneaking in the playoffs, and then there wasn't a lot of success. Last year, you guys get in, you win your first round playoff game, and you fall in the quarterfinals for the first time since 2020. So I would say that you probably didn't reach your ultimate goal, but it was still a successful season. Talk to me about how you kind of put the bow on that one and move on to this year.
Well, one, I think when you go 10-2, that's a pretty good year.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to tackle some challenges that our program has never had to do. We had played 3 teams in Ohio. We went 3-0 in that. 2 of them were traditionally strong football teams, and we came out of that. The bugaboo was playing them and then play a couple of the local teams that are pretty good. We got banged up. So, but I think it was a successful year. It left a little sour taste in your mouth, because Doddridge County might have beat us either way. But when you got 5 guys out, it just frustrates you that you can't play to your capability. But there's only one team going to be happy at the end of the year, So, but like you said, I mean, if we go back to 2018, and you tell us we're going to be in 4 semis, 2 state championships, and 2 quarters, I think most people would take it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's but I also think that speaks to the standard that you guys have set. That that pressure is a privilege, as a lot of people say, and those expectations are as well. And speaking of expectations, I don't really think that they drop off a cliff. Obviously, you lost a lot of really good players. You've always been the first to say it. It's a tailback centric offense. You graduated one of the best tailbacks in program history. It's crazy to say that because you've had probably the 3 best tailbacks in program history come back in 3 consecutive years or so. But I want to just kind of talk about how you go about filling those holes because, Alex Blankenship on both lines, Silas Nelson, Landon Riddle, Phelan. There were so many players that knew a lot, that could do a lot, that were just smart football players that you have to go about replacing. How do you try to do that?
Well, basically, it's competition. I mean, this year it's not set. Those other years you pretty much knew. When you had a small school, it's not like you're looking out there and say you got 8 guys competing for it. This year we kind of do. We're taking a look at Paxton there. Grimmett had a really good scrimmage, and we'll take a look at Treadway. We'll take a little bit of look at Treadway this week at running back a little bit as well. So if this time of year, it might just be first couple games, by committee till somebody settles in.
You talked about a little bit, but Treadway and Antoine Hicks transfers from Oak Hill, and those are guys, they're skill players, but that's what's quantifiable for a lot of people. They're going to look at that. Talk about how you've been able to get them up to speed because we talked about it for years. That first year with Brock at quarterback, even though he was the first team All-Stater, there were a lot of things you had to do differently because you have a freshman at quarterback and the offense you want to run with the choice routes. It takes a lot of reps, and these guys are coming over. They've had a couple months in the system with spring ball and the way you guys do things. How has the process been in catching them up to speed with what you do?
Well, I think it's been a positive. It's been much more positive than negative. We run choice routes, and that's really different than a lot of people do. A lot of people have their set routes that they run, and they're going to run this against 3 deep, or they're going to run this against quarters. But with us, everything's based on how the defense aligns to us, and sometimes that takes a minute to get used to. And I would say we're ahead of the game, but not where we've been.
Gotcha. But they are great athletic players. Has it been hard to even do you try to kind of when you can't do the choice routes, do you try to kind of find ways to manufacture touches for those kinds of kids?
No, I think I see a lot of teams that run everything. You know, they're going to run wing T. They're going to run the spread. They're going to run it. You know, I think you got to marry something, you know, and I think your good teams marry something that you're going to be good at something. And if the other team's better than you, then they beat you. But, you know, we're married to what we're doing. We've been successful at what we're doing. So we're just going to keep doing what we do and try to get better at it.
So you guys, and you're not shy about this. You've always been a single back offense for as long as you've done this. Now, again, your passing game was really prolific these last couple of years, especially last year, nearly 3,000 yards passing. As a team, you actually may have had 3,000 yards passing, but you know, with the inexperience at tailback, do you imagine that philosophy changes, or do you still try to Do you still try to kind of base everything on the ground game?
Well, no, I think, you know, when you got your starting quarterback back, he's a 3-year starter, and you think he's a good one, you know, you turn him loose a little bit. Yeah, I imagine we'll turn him loose a little bit more than we have the last 2 years, and you know, we'll lean on him in the passing game, and as our running backs get acclimated to what we're doing. So, you know, but I mean, if you watched us 7 years ago and you watch us today, we're the same thing. Now we might throw more, but it's the same stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about KJ Vyers for a second because it's very rare. I don't think it's ever happened before, at least not in the area, where you have a freshman that comes in and he's a 1,000-yard receiver automatically. We kind of knew off the bat that he was a guy because the touchdown there in the end zone against Herbert Hoover, contested catch. He had to go up over 2 guys. That's a big boy play. You see seniors that don't make that play. And he's first varsity game, 100 yards receiving. That play kind of showed us what kind of kid he was and what he was made of. He's kind of had to take the reins, I believe, on as skill production goes this offseason. He's probably your most established skill player coming into the year. Let's talk about the growth that you've seen from him, because I know it can be hard to do a lot when you play 3 different sports, but I imagine that there's probably a lot that you've seen that you liked.
Well, yeah, I mean, what makes him so good is he's kind of a freak athlete. You know, when you're an extremely good athlete, you can get away with some stuff other guys can't. And, you know, so he's done a fairly good job in the offseason of getting bigger and stronger. He loves the weight room, and even though he plays 3 sports, but he eats the weight room up. So it's really not an issue with us. Yes, he's a mismatch in the slot, I think, at 6'3". But we think we got some good guys on the outside. You know, Hicks is a phenomenal athlete. He's shown that if he gets the ball in his hands, he can make a play. Carson's a good wide receiver. We're high on Connor James, and we got a freshman, Zeke Nelson, Silas's little brother, who's going to be really good too. So I think we got a good. If you're the coach in the wide receiver room, you're smiling.
Yeah, Brock had mentioned Zeke. He said he's out here dunking with 2 hands, and he hasn't even started high school yet. Essentially, he hasn't even had his first day of high school, which is pretty crazy. We talked a lot about the offense. That's the most continuity. Defense is where I kind of had the most questions with you guys because of all the holes you had to fill. Phelan, I remember after the Hoover game, you said he had 100% alignment. Just a smart player. Landon Riddle, a guy that could do a lot of different things. He could rush. He could drop. You know, and obviously losing him, I felt like really kind of derailed your season in the postseason. And, you know, you go back, Linksweiler in the secondary. You Bradbury in the secondary. So many different Alex Blankenship, so many different players on defense that are now gone. How do you go about replacing them? And what have been your impressions on that side of the ball? Obviously, you have, I would say, probably the best defensive player back in Conley. You know, top 3 when we ask people to rank them. But outside of that, there are a lot of unknowns.
Well, there is, and in some ways that makes it kind of fun as far as coaching. I mean, last year we knew what to expect. You know, these guys are 3-year starters. They played in huge games and in pressure-packed situations. This year we don't know how they're going to react. Now, I do think we're talented. I think we got the talent, but can we play well together? And that's kind of been the mantra in the training camp, is playing well together, gelling together. There's still a lot of what ifs. You know, what if they do this? What if they do this? Where last year they already knew it. So yeah, there's a lot of teaching. We're still not where we need to be defensively. You know, but that's one reason I think why we're scrimmaging so hard. I mean, Chapmanville was in the semifinals last year. I think they're top 5 this year. We scrimmaged them last week. I felt like we had a good scrimmage. And dang, I don't know, you know, after watching Princeton, I think they're still, I don't know. I think they got a shot at that state championship again, just watching them. And so that will get us ready for the season because, if you make mistakes in the scrimmage and you give up points, it's 0-0. So let's get it done. I mean, if we could have scrimmaged easy, then I don't think we would see the mistakes that we need to clear up. And we talked about that with the kids. I mean, we could scrimmage to a team that we could beat really bad, but I don't think that makes us a better football team.
Yeah, I was talking with Brock about that same exact thing. He really answered the question beforehand, but there's a argument that your scrimmages are basically the same as your regular season with as difficult as what it is and the quality of teams that you play. Kind of with the same thing I said about offense, where I asked if you'd have to pare things down or do anything differently. With a defense that's a little different, do you feel like you'll be able to kind of run the full complement or the full menu, or do you have to kind of ease them in as the year goes on?
Well, we tweaked a little bit because of the personnel that we have. In years past, we've had an enormous amount of skilled people, so we can do a lot of things. This year, we've got 10 linemen that can play on offense and defense, and I believe that. I heard Coach Simon say, can your kid play for someone else? And you got a good player. And I think we got some guys that can play for other people. So we kind of tweaked our defense a little bit so we can get more of those linemen on the field because we have so many linemen in the next couple of years. We're going to have some good linemen. So the answer to your question is not only now we're doing some of the stuff we still done, but it's more from a 4-down base instead of a 3-down.
Okay, so when you say that, and the reason I ask this question is because you obviously know I'm a big Eagles fan. Their base no longer has three linebackers. Their base is 5 defensive linemen and 2 linebackers. Is that kind of the? I know you've always kind of been like a 5-down bare front sort of team. How exactly does it change to get more of those linemen on the field?
Well, no, we're still 3-down base. But we got some guys that are kind of hybrids. Like Conley, who can drop down and play defensive line. So it's just basically structurally trying to get more bigger men on the field because I think also when you're at a small school, from time to time you got to kind of change your personnel. I mean, you can be a spread team, and if you got you got 4 running backs, no wide receivers, you're a pretty dumb coach. But if you've got a large group of phenomenal linemen, you try to tweak it to where you're using more linemen. It's like when I talked to Dave Walker many years ago. He's a 3-3 guy forever, and all of a sudden he started getting 15, 16 linemen that can play. But he didn't have a linebacker. So you got to tweak it to your personnel, and especially when you're at a small school. Sometimes you can get yourself in trouble being stubborn.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to put it. This schedule, it's brutal, and not only is it brutal, but it's sort of unforgiving in a lot of ways. In the fact that you only get 2 home games, it can be brutal, but if you have the comfort of 4 to 5 home games, that kind of helps it. But there's so many long trips. How do you kind of keep this group focused? And I know they've been through a lot in their high school careers. I go back to their freshman year. It was, I mean, one storm literally after another. The Hoover game, the Rook game delays, the personal losses that the program experienced, the James Monroe playoff game that was played on Sunday.
Yeah.
There was so much. It kind of feels like it probably built the character for them to be able to withstand what they're going to go through this year on the road. But how do you kind of reckon with that? And because you talked about last year, one of the disadvantages of being a school with under 600 and expecting to be good is you have to build depth, and when 1 or 2 of those pieces break, puts a lot of pressure on everything else. So when 5 break, that's that can be pretty damning, and in a lot of ways it was last year at the end of the season. How do you kind of go about navigating that with this schedule? Because the ultimate goal is just to get into the postseason.
Well, that's the $1,000,000 question, right? I mean, everything you said is probably on the coach's mind. How when you play away, you got to take on the environment as well. When you're at home, the adrenaline carries over. So if you're playing a really good team at home, your adrenaline and we pack it over here, and you've been here. It's pretty exciting for a small school, and but when you play away, you're taking on all the other elements as well. So there's no room for error. So, one of the things we're trying to do is just fight to try to make sure that we're so technique sound and so scheme sound that, we don't make that fatal mistake. When you only have 2 home games, and, that's frustrating a little bit to your kids. But I think that the answer to your question is I'm hoping and I think that the guys in that locker room over there have a little bit higher ceiling for themselves. So we can't set, it's like an embrace the suck. the Navy SEAL stuff, embrace the suck. All right, because we can't change it. And if we're talking about the schedule now, then we're not focused where we need to be. Our focus should be on Armstrong, Pennsylvania, a team we know nothing about, and try to get ourselves as good as we can. And so Bluefield had to do it last year, and it worked out well for them. Martinsburg's had to do it, and it's worked out well for them. So, we're just going to embrace the suck and just do the best we can. And we done, like in the scrimmage, we did as much as we could, Tyler, to play as many kids. For first scrimmage, we played on defense. We played 9 linemen. In the 20 plays, we played 9 different linemen, played 5 different linebackers, and 8 DBs. And that was purpose, because we're going to try to get ourselves in a situation where if we do get into that injury bug playing the schedule, we just don't completely drop off the map with some guys who can't do what we ask them to do. So that's a long-winded answer, but it is what it is.
No, that's great. The more thorough, the better there. What do you kind of consider a successful season? A lot of people like to put numbers on it. A lot of people like to put a specific round. We'd like to win a playoff game or something like that. I remember going into 2021, the goal was we would like to host the first, get to the quarterfinals for the first time since I think it was the '86 team had done it. What does that look like this year? Because I know that you lost a lot of kids, but you still have so much talent back. When I did the poll with the panelists, you had a lot of players on that list. I think you had at least 3 in the top 10: the quarterback, the wide receiver. No, you had 4, because you had Vyers, Treadway, Brock, and then you had Conley. So there are still very high expectations around the area for what this team's going to be. And I've talked to other teams throughout the area that saw you in 7-on-7s this summer. They said they're still really good. Some even expect you to be maybe even a little bit better. So what are the expectations, and what's the goal for this year?
Well, I think the goal for us really is, and first of your answer to that is, and this is something we've been working on even today a little bit. Perfume smells really good. When you spray
the
it
rat
on it,
poison.
yeah. But when you drink it, it's poisonous, and we gotta be very careful on that. We're blessed that we have a couple of good kids, and we're thankful that people think that some of our kids are good. Are they better than everybody else? That's for other people to decide. But right now we just got to be the best Patriot we can be. I think the thing that for us to have a successful season, to me, is we got to stick together. I mean, like, if you ask me this question if we fortunate enough to make the playoffs, if you ask me that question, I would say we stuck together. We went through a lot of hard times. We went through some peaks and valleys because of how we got to handle things. And if we can stick together and not backbite and be a team, and not worry about this stuff, I think we'll be okay. But if we get to backbiting and we get to arguing when things don't go our way, and that's a work in progress for us, I think we'll be unsuccessful. So for us, I think it's more mental than physical. I think most people would see us and say physically they're okay. All right, but how okay are we mentally? And the one thing that we've learned, we're fortunate enough to learn, we're not like a lot of other programs. A lot of this stuff's been new to us, and we've had to figure out that if you stick together, all right, you'll be successful. And I think that's where some teams fall apart. And that's been pretty much everything we've hammered in the off season, is how we handle adversity, how we handle this, because sometimes we don't handle it well. And so it's going to be a large part of mental for us. So the answer to your question is, if we stick together, and you ask me this question 10 weeks from now, and you said, John, what's up? And I said, well, we stuck together. We went through some hard times or good times, and we stuck together. I think we'll be successful. But if we're going to be lightweights or puds, we won't, and that's probably with every team, but it's going to be very much with our team.
You talked about a lot of this is still new to the program and everything. That first week, you're going to retire Atticus's jersey. He's a kid that's pretty synonymous with the rise of the program, and deservedly so. The year you guys went to your won playoff games in 2021. He was the guy. He won the Kennedy that year. He won the Warner Award that year, and obviously the year before that, whenever you went up to Fairmont. And then it was a very competitive game in the first half.
15-7.
Yeah. Exactly. Really, he just ran out of time. I think he got down to about the 10 or so to end the first half. But that opened eyes statewide when you competed with Fairmont in the first half. Then you parlay it And a lot of that, he's just very synonymous with the rise of this program. Let's talk about what it means to be able to, retire his jersey. You've had a lot of great players play for you. He was your first Kennedy, and it seems like it's just going to be a very special moment.
Yeah, well, it is. He carried us. A lot of people forget, that was the COVID years and how difficult it was to practice in COVID. Even when we went to Fairmont, we lost 3 starting linemen on Thursday before we went to Fairmont. We lost our signal coach, Coach Cuthbert. He got quarantined. We lost the other signal caller. Did that affect us? It did, because we're trying to run no huddle and we couldn't get to play in on time, and we're on the 3-yard line. We could have very well went in 15-14. And, we just leaned on him so much. I think he ran the ball 36, 37 times a game. And, that's a heavy load for a big back, because he's not a small man. He's a big man. And the second year, he pretty much took us to the state championship, and he had to do that because we had a really good group of young kids, but they wasn't ready yet. Now, when we won the state championship, we were ready. They were 13, 14 3-year starters. We had 22 seniors. You don't get that too often as a coach. But until they grew up, he carried us. And, he was just a phenomenal athlete. But the biggest thing about him, Tyler, and you know him, you've met him, is what kind of a great person he is. He's just a good guy. Never met anybody that didn't like him. He's a kid that you want to pull for. Mm-hmm. People want to pull for guys like that, and they did. I had many people. I go down to our camp in Summers County. People say, "Hey, man, Atticus is such a good kid. Judah's such a good kid," and that makes me feel better than some of the other things that people think our guys are good kids.
Yeah, I mean that's great. Like I said, I saw him this summer. Actually, I think it was earlier this month, maybe it was late last month. Whenever you guys had your camp, he came there, was a guest speaker. A lot of the kids were pretty fascinated to see him. They might have been too young, but some of them do remember him. But yeah, that's great.
His message was pretty spot on. You are one injury away from being over.
Yeah, exactly.
He fractures his hip and playing street basketball. And really never recovered from it, wholly from it. So, he's just such a great guy.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, Coach, I think that's all I got for you. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today and having us down here. Like I said, it really is beautiful and nice. And looking forward to seeing you this year. Again, not exactly sure where we'll see you because you only have 2 home games, but again, they're all quality games. We talked about Jameson Rowe, Mingo Central. Bluefield is obviously the big one that I have circled every year just because I like the rivalry that you guys have built.
We're playing the 2-time state champ. Hadn't lost a game in 2 years at their place.
Frankfurt, later in the year, you get to go up there to do that one.
I don't think anybody can say we're not playing a difficult schedule. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's the most difficult because, honestly, we don't know anything about them. 3 of the teams, we know nothing about them. I mean, we have no film, no nothing. The team that we're playing in North Carolina is literally playing in Dublin, Ireland, a private school out of Texas in Dublin, Ireland, the week before we play them. So we're not going to get any eyes on that. So, it's going to be interesting.
Okay, so I have to ask, do you know the ins and outs of how you take a team from Texas and go to Dublin, Ireland to play a week 1 game and make that logistically work? Because even NFL teams hate that. So you're asking that sounds crazy to me.
Well, listen, when you're a private school, that is one heck of a recruiting tool, because, you put that on the schedule. We're going to Dublin, Ireland. You're going to pick up probably 5 kids that want to go to Dublin, Ireland, but I can't even think the logistics of that. I mean, we're pulling our hair out getting to North Carolina with all these. We got more stupid rules, Tyler, for leaving the state than you don't even want to know. So leaving the country and getting visas, I couldn't even imagine doing that. The only thing I hope is they have a little bit of plane trouble. They get back 2 days late. They
jet lag.
So, I mean, we're not going to lie, but they're good people down there and they're treating us well. And that's Joe Gibbs' school. He built the school. It's right beside right beside his raceway. All his racing operations is right beside the school. He's got his Washington Redskin museum there. They're kind of greasing you up a little bit when they, tell you they're going to let you, we're going to meet you and take you through you say, well, okay, we get it. But, we're playing at Johnson C. Smith University. So that's always fun too. I think our kids had fun playing at Marietta University last year. So, it's been fun. And honestly, People see it as a lot of bad playing out of state, but it's kind of been fun because, you know, trying to get ready for a new team. You may get the bear, but the bear may get you.
It's funny you mentioned that because a lot of people nowadays probably think of Joe Gibbs as just because of his connections with NASCAR. They don't realize he was a three-time Super Bowl champion and won in various different ways from the
Three different
Hogs.
quarterbacks,
Yep.
yeah.
Was it Theismann, Rippon, and Doug
Offensive
Williams?
coordinator for
Yeah.
Dan Coryell, and the
Yeah.
magic passing attack of Dan Coryell. Those young guys don't remember that, but
No, he did because the Raiders were Super Bowl contenders back
yeah,
whenever he got his first
that's
start.
my
Yeah.
Raiders were pretty good back then. It's been a minute though, but I'm a Raiders guy.
Gotcha. Okay, so like I said, I appreciate you taking time to talk to me today and looking forward to seeing you guys this year.
All right, thank you so much for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you.